"Which one of you is Mara Ellis?" Every employee froze. 4 massive men in black suits had just walked into the cafe, asking for the curvy waitress who'd helped a confused older woman the night before. Mara stepped forward. The largest man said she had to come with them. She refused. Then he placed a photograph on the counter. The woman Mara had protected wasn't an ordinary grandmother. She was Elena Vitali, mother of Alessandro Vitali, the most feared mafia boss on the East Coast. And Alessandro wanted Mara brought to him immediately. Mara thought she was about to be interrogated. She was wrong. Because when she reached into her apron pocket, she found a folded document she'd accidentally carried home. 4 signatures were missing. One was Elena's, and someone had been willing to exploit a mafia boss's mother to get it. Mara stared at the photograph on the counter. There was no mistaking the woman. Same elegant silver hair, same pearl earrings, same intelligent eyes that, for one frightening hour the night before, had struggled to make sense of where she was. "Elena Vitali," Mara repeated. The largest bodyguard gave a single nod. Mara looked at the other 3 men, then back at him. "And you thought opening with 'Come with us' was the reassuring approach?" One of the men almost smiled. The largest did not. "Mr. Vitali needs to speak with you. Then, Mr. Vitali can explain why. He wants to know what happened to his mother last night." That changed everything. The night before, Elena had remained in the cafe after everyone else had begun leaving. At first, Mara assumed she was waiting for someone. Then she noticed the older woman checking the same empty chair repeatedly. Her phone was gone. She could not remember where her driver had gone, and when Mara gently asked whether there was someone she could call, Elena had become visibly frustrated, not frightened, but confused by her own inability to answer. Then a man had appeared. Expensive coat, polished shoes, calm smile. He claimed to be Elena's nephew. Elena had looked at him and said something Mara had not forgotten. "I know your face. I don't know why I don't trust it." The man laughed it off. Mara didn't. When he tried to hurry Elena toward the door, Mara stepped between them. He told her it was a family matter. Mara told him family members usually knew enough about their relatives to answer basic questions. He became less polite after that. So did Mara. She called the authorities. The man disappeared before they arrived. Eventually, Elena's legitimate driver was located, his identity confirmed, and Elena was safely reunited with him. Mara had gone home believing she had simply helped a vulnerable woman through a bad night. Apparently, she had accidentally interfered in the affairs of one of the most powerful families in America. "You did the right thing," the bodyguard said. "Good, because for a minute, the 4-man intimidation committee had me confused." This time, someone definitely coughed to hide a laugh. The large man exhaled slowly. "Ms. Ellis, no one is here to hurt you." That sentence would be more convincing if there weren't 4 of you. "Mrs. Vitali specifically asked for you." Mara hesitated. "Elena asked?" "Yes." That mattered. Mara untied her apron. "Fine, but I'm telling my manager where I'm going." "Of course. And I keep my phone." "Yes. And if anybody says, 'Get in the trunk,' I'm reconsidering." The bodyguard finally looked almost offended. "We have a car. I assumed the Mafia had upgraded." Silence. Mara winced. "Was I not supposed to say Mafia?" No one answered. "Right. Excellent start." She folded her apron over one arm, and something crackled inside the pocket. Mara frowned. She reached in. Her fingers closed around several folded sheets of paper. For a second, she simply stared. Then memory struck. The man from last night. He had been holding papers when he approached Elena. During the argument, Elena had pushed them away. Mara had gathered several things from the table afterward. Napkins, Elena's glasses case, her own order pad. She must have swept the papers up with them. Mara unfolded the document. Dense legal language covered the pages. Near the bottom were several signature lines. 4 were blank. 1 bore a printed name beneath it. Elena Vitale. The atmosphere changed instantly. The largest bodyguard took one careful step closer. "Where did you get that?" Mara looked up. "I think the man from last night was trying to make Elena sign it." No one smiled now. The bodyguard pulled out his phone. Mara looked again at Elena's unsigned name. Until that moment, she had assumed she had stopped a stranger from taking advantage of a confused older woman. Now she understood something far more disturbing. The man had not come only for Elena. He had come for her signature. And somewhere across the city, Alessandro Vitale was waiting to find out why. The first thing Mara noticed about Alessandro Vitale was that nobody around him seemed capable of relaxing. Security guards straightened when he passed. Assistants lowered their voices. Men in expensive suits waited for him to finish speaking before they dared interrupt. And then there was Alessandro himself. At 41, he was tall, powerfully built, and almost unfairly handsome, dressed in a dark tailored suit that probably cost more than Mara made in several months. But it was not his appearance that made the room feel smaller. It was the control. Alessandro Vitale ran an organization whose influence stretched across the East Coast, backed by a legitimate empire worth billions in shipping, commercial real estate, construction, luxury hotels, private security, and investments. Powerful people answered his calls. Others feared receiving them. Mara had known all of this for approximately 20 minutes. She already found him irritating. "Start from the beginning," Alessandro said. Mara sat across from him at a long table. "I already did. I want to hear it from you. You have 4 men who apparently specialize in collecting cafe workers. Didn't they brief you?" One of the bodyguards looked carefully at the floor. Alessandro did not smile. "My mother was medically vulnerable last night. A man approached her under false pretenses. I need precision." Mara's humor disappeared. "Then ask me questions. Don't talk to me like I'm the suspect." His gaze sharpened. "I haven't decided what you are yet." That did it. Mara leaned back. "I'm the woman who stopped a stranger from walking away with your mother." Silence settled over the room. "I didn't know she was Elena Vitale. I didn't know you existed until 4 refrigerators in suits arrived at my workplace this morning." One bodyguard coughed. Alessandro glanced toward him. The coughing stopped immediately. Mara continued. "If I'd wanted something from your family, Mr. Vitale, I had a strange way of showing it. I called the police." For the first time, something shifted in Alessandro's expression. Not warmth, recognition. "Tell me about the man." Mara did. Mid-40s, expensive clothes, controlled voice, no visible panic when challenged. He said he was her nephew? Yes, but he didn't behave like family. How? He kept saying she was not in a condition to make things difficult. Alessandro went still. Exact words? Close to exact. What else? He showed me a business card for about 2 seconds when I asked who he was. You remember the name? No. Alessandro's expression hardened slightly. But, Mara added, I remember the logo. She described a dark blue geometric mark and part of a word beneath it. One of Alessandro's advisors immediately began typing. And Elena? Alessandro asked. She recognized his face. But she didn't trust him. Mara paused. She also became more upset whenever he mentioned paperwork. Alessandro's attention shifted to the folded pages, now sealed inside a clear evidence sleeve on the table. You found these in your apron this morning? Yes. You expect me to believe you accidentally carried away documents worth hundreds of millions of dollars? Mara blinked. Hundreds of millions? The document concerns management authority over a family property trust. She looked at the pages. I thought it was paperwork. It is. That is a deeply unhelpful definition of paperwork. A faint sound came from behind Alessandro. One of his men had failed to suppress a laugh. Alessandro ignored him. If my mother had signed these under the conditions you described, someone could have attempted to transfer substantial control over legitimate family assets. Mara's stomach tightened. The previous night suddenly looked different. The man's impatience, the papers, the way he had tried to get Eleanor out quickly when Mara interfered. He wasn't trying to take her somewhere, Mara said slowly. Alessandro watched her. He needed her cooperative long enough to sign. Possibly. Mara thought back. He used another phrase. What phrase? She closed her eyes briefly, reconstructing the moment. He told her, "This only formalizes what we already discussed." Alessandro's expression changed, not dramatically, but everyone else in the room noticed. He turned toward one of his advisors. Cross uses that phrase. The advisor nodded slowly. Frequently. Cross? Mara asked. Julian Cross, Alessandro said. Financial advisor. He has worked with several Vitale trusts. Mara stared at him. So you know the man? We know someone who may fit your description. That distinction told Mara something important. Alessandro did not jump to conclusions, even when angry. Especially when angry. He looked at her again, but the suspicion in his gaze had changed into something more measured. You noticed his language, his card, my mother's reaction, and the paperwork. I work in customer service. Alessandro raised an eyebrow. You learn to recognize trouble before it asks to speak to the manager. This time, Alessandro almost smiled. Almost. Then the door opened. An elegant voice came from behind Mara. Alessandro, have you finished interrogating the woman who saved your mother? Mara turned. Elena Vitale stood in the doorway, perfectly composed, and visibly annoyed with her son. Alessandro stood. Mother. The change in him was subtle, but Mara caught it immediately. The feared Mafia Boss, who had questioned her like a federal investigator, suddenly looked like a son who already knew he was about to lose an argument. Elena walked directly past him. Mara. Before Mara could stand completely, Elena took both her hands. You stayed with me. You were having a bad night. I was confused, frightened, missing my phone, and apparently being stalked by fraudulent paperwork. You may call it a bad night. I call it a disaster with excellent coffee. Mara laughed, despite herself. Elena smiled. There. Much better. Everyone in this house has been looking at me as if I might shatter. Your son doesn't look worried. Oh, Alessandro always looks like that. Mother. He practiced as a child. Mara made the mistake of looking at Alessandro. His expression remained perfectly controlled, which somehow made it funnier. Elena turned to him. Have you thanked her? I was gathering information. That means no. I intended to. When? When the interrogation ended, Mara suggested. Elena looked delighted. Alessandro slowly sat down again. Please, he said, both of you continue. Elena did. She insisted Mara stay for breakfast. Mara explained that she had already eaten. Elena responded that coffee did not count as breakfast. Mara said there had also been a muffin. Elena looked personally offended. 10 minutes later, Mara found herself at a table large enough to seat a diplomatic delegation, eating eggs she had never requested. Alessandro sat across from her, reviewing copies of the trust documents with 2 advisors. Mara tried not to look. She failed. One number caught her attention, then another. She frowned. Alessandro noticed. What? Nothing. You're staring at the document. I'm trying not to. You're doing poorly. Mara put down her fork. Can I ask something potentially stupid? One of my advisors charged $1,200 an hour to ask 3 this morning. Go ahead. Mara pointed toward 2 pages. Why is that property worth $186 million here and $214 million here? The room became quiet. One advisor leaned forward. What? Mara immediately regretted speaking. I'm probably misunderstanding it. She pointed again. This schedule lists the consolidated valuation at $186 million, but the authorization summary uses $214 million for what looks like the same property group. The advisor took the pages. They may be based on different valuation dates. That's what I thought, Mara said, but the effective date printed here is the same. Alessandro looked at his advisor. The man stopped talking. He began reading. Mara lifted both hands. Again, I make coffee for a living. Please do not reorganize a billion-dollar empire because I noticed 2 numbers. You study accounting? Elena asked. Bookkeeping and business administration. Online. Alessandro looked back at Mara. You didn't mention that. You asked whether I knew Julian Cross, not whether I had homework. Elena smiled into her tea. One of the advisors opened a laptop and began comparing records. Several minutes passed. Then his expression changed. She's right. Mara stopped chewing. The advisor turned the screen toward Alessandro. The underlying valuation schedule was altered in the authorization packet. Same effective date, different figure. What does that mean? Mara asked. It means, Alessandro said calmly, we now have another reason to examine every document Cross touched. Mara looked at the papers. I only noticed a mismatch. Yes, Alessandro said. You noticed it. There was something different in the way he said it. Not surprised that a cafe worker could read numbers. Respect that she had paid attention. Mara felt strangely more unsettled by that than by his suspicion. Alessandro closed the file. I need you to help reconstruct last night. I already told you what happened. I need more than the sequence. Where everyone stood, what Cross touched, what he said before you approached, whether my mother signed anything else. Mara shook her head. I have work. We can compensate you. Her expression changed immediately. Alessandro saw it. I'm not asking to buy your cooperation. It sounded remarkably similar. Elena intervened. My son occasionally believes money is a complete sentence. Mother, I'm translating. Mara looked between them. I'll help, because someone tried to take advantage of her. Not because I want anything from you. Alessandro held her gaze. Understood. And temporarily. Yes. And around my schedule. A pause. Yes. Elena looked far too pleased. Mara noticed. Why are you smiling? I'm grateful. That is not your grateful face. Alessandro rubbed a hand across his jaw. Do not encourage her. Encourage what? Nothing, Elena said innocently. Over the next several days, Elena found an astonishing number of reasons Mara needed to return. A forgotten detail over lunch. A document requiring clarification at dinner. A question Elena could apparently only remember when Alessandro happened to be present. By the 3rd coincidence, Mara began to suspect something. By the 4th, she was certain. Elena, Mara said one afternoon, did you actually need me here today? Elena considered the question. No. Across the room, Alessandro closed his eyes. Mara stared at her. Elena calmly sipped her tea. But, she added, glancing between them, I find the results promising. For the first time since entering Alessandro Vitale's world, Mara understood exactly what Elena was doing. And judging by the expression on Alessandro's face, he had understood long before she had. Over the next week, Alessandro discovered something increasingly inconvenient about Mara Ellis. She was exactly the same person, no matter who was in the room. She never asked what Elena's gratitude might be worth. She never hinted that her apartment was small, that tuition was expensive, or that working cafe shifts while studying online was exhausting. She also treated Alessandro's security team with a casual normality that seemed to confuse them. "Did you eat lunch?" she asked one guard after noticing him standing outside a meeting for 3 hours. "I'm working." "That wasn't my question." The man glanced toward Alessandro, as if requesting tactical guidance. Alessandro looked away. 5 minutes later, the guard was eating half of Mara's sandwich. She did not pretend to understand financial structures she didn't understand. When conversations became too technical, she asked questions. When she noticed something strange, she said so. And when Alessandro disagreed with her, she did not become intimidated simply because everyone else in the room did. "You're wrong," she told him once. 3 advisors became fascinated by their notebooks. Alessandro stared at her. "Am I?" "Yes." She pointed at a timeline they were reconstructing. "You keep assuming Elena became suspicious after Julian mentioned the documents. She didn't." "When did she?" "When he touched her shoulder." Alessandro's expression sharpened. Mara continued. "She moved away from him before she saw the papers. Whatever history she had with that man, her body recognized the problem before her memory did." Alessandro checked Elena's statement. Mara was right. Again. Respect became familiarity. Familiarity became something neither of them discussed. Then Alessandro made the mistake of visiting Mara's café. Officially, he had one final question about Julian Cross. Unofficially, the question could easily have been handled by telephone. His security team knew this. Mara probably knew this. Alessandro preferred not to examine it. He was standing near the counter when a man carrying an invoice box entered through the side door. "Mara." Mara looked up and smiled. "Nathan." Alessandro immediately disliked the smile. Nathan Brooks was 35, friendly, casually dressed, and apparently far too comfortable leaning against Mara's counter. "I brought the corrected supplier invoices," Nathan said. "And before you accuse me, yes, I fixed the duplicate charge." "You voluntarily corrected an invoice?" "I'm growing as a person. I'm proud of you." Nathan grinned. Alessandro looked at his watch, then at Nathan, then back at his watch. One of his bodyguards quietly turned away. Nathan noticed Alessandro. "Oh, sorry. Am I interrupting?" "No," Mara said. "Yes," Alessandro said. Mara slowly looked at him. Alessandro corrected himself. "We were discussing something time-sensitive." Mara folded her arms. "You asked whether Julian held his business card in his left or right hand. It may be relevant. It happened 8 days ago." Nathan glanced between them. "I can come back." "That won't be necessary," Alessandro said. "Why?" Mara asked. A dangerous question. Alessandro answered with complete seriousness. "How long does a supplier normally need to deliver invoices?" Nathan blinked. "Depends. On the invoices." One bodyguard suddenly developed an intense interest in the pastry display. Mara's eyes narrowed. "Nathan has known me for 6 years." Alessandro nodded. "That seems unusually long for a supplier relationship." Now Mara understood. Her lips parted, then curved. "Oh." Alessandro immediately disliked that "oh." "What?" "Nothing." "Mara." She looked toward his security team. Every man found something else to examine. One studied the ceiling. Another checked his phone. The third appeared deeply concerned about a blueberry muffin. Mara looked back at Alessandro. "Are you jealous?" "No." The answer came too quickly. Nathan took one cautious step backward. Mara's smile widened. "You are." "I am investigating." "A coffee supplier?" "I ask questions." "You asked how long he delivers invoices." It was a question. Nathan lifted the invoice box. "I feel like I should go." "Nathan," Mara said, fighting laughter, You're fine. Alessandro looked at him. Nathan reconsidered. Actually, I just remembered another delivery. He disappeared through the door. Mara stared at Alessandro. You scared away my coffee supplier. I did nothing. You interrogated him about invoice delivery duration. I asked 2 questions. 3. Alessandro adjusted his cuff. Mara laughed. Not politely, not nervously. She genuinely laughed at him. A man feared by criminals, obeyed by executives, and treated carefully by people with political influence, stood silently while a cafe worker found his jealousy hilarious. Strangely, he did not mind. What bothered him was how much he liked hearing her laugh. Mara's expression softened. For one quiet second, neither of them joked. Something had changed. The investigation had brought them together. But this moment had nothing to do with Elena. Nothing to do with Julian. Nothing to do with the document. Alessandro had come to the cafe because he wanted to see Mara. And judging by the way she was looking at him now, she knew it. Neither of them noticed the problem approaching. Because while Alessandro was finally beginning to trust Mara without reservation, Julian Cross had realized something dangerous. The cafe worker everyone had underestimated was now the one witness who could destroy him. And if he could not erase what Mara knew, he could make Alessandro question why she knew it. 3 days later, Mara walked into a formal meeting, believing she was there to answer one final question. She knew something was wrong before anyone spoke. The room held Alessandro, Elena, 2 attorneys, several financial advisors, and 3 people Mara had never met. No one offered her coffee. Considering Elena was present, that alone was alarming. Alessandro stood at the head of the table. Mara, sit down, as she remained standing. What happened? One attorney placed a clear evidence sleeve on the table. Inside was a single page. Mara recognized the formatting immediately. It belonged to the trust document. This page was recovered separately from the others, the attorney said. Mara frowned. So? It contains provisions related to intermediary compensation. I don't know what that means. It means someone involved in facilitating the transfer could receive payment. Mara looked at Alessandro. His face revealed nothing. Then another document appeared. A financial record. The attorney continued. A payment was routed through 2 intermediary accounts to an account connected to an online education platform you use. Mara stared at him. What? The amount was $12,000. For several seconds, she genuinely thought she had misunderstood. I have never received $12,000. The payment was credited against an account associated with your student profile. That is impossible. One of the advisors spoke carefully. There is also the question of why one page of the original document was not returned with the others. Mara's stomach dropped. You think I kept it? We are establishing facts. No, you're establishing a story. Her gaze moved around the table. She understood the story immediately. A struggling cafe worker, a wealthy, confused older woman, a document worth hundreds of millions. A suspicious payment. Suddenly, kindness had become motive. One advisor cleared his throat. It is possible the encounter with Mrs. Vitali was not accidental. Elena stood. That is absurd. Mother, Alessandro said quietly. No, I will not sit here while people who were not there explain why the woman who protected me must secretly be a criminal. Mara barely heard her. She was watching Alessandro. Do you believe this? His silence lasted only a few seconds. It felt much longer. I believe the evidence needs to be examined. Something inside Mara went cold. That wasn't my question. Alessandro held her gaze. I don't make decisions before I understand the facts. There it was. Not an accusation. Somehow, that hurt more. Mara nodded slowly. Of course. Mara, no. Investigate. Her voice remained calm. If you think I helped Elena because I wanted money, nothing I say in this room will fix that. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. She looked at the people around the table. Yesterday, some of them had praised her observational skills. Today, $12,000 had appeared on a screen, and suddenly her ordinary life looked suspicious. Her cafe job, her tuition, her financial struggles, all transformed into evidence of greed. Mara picked up her bag. Then Alessandro's eyes moved back to the financial record. Wait. Nobody moved. He took the document from the attorney. When was this payment initiated? Tuesday. Alessandro looked up. What time? The advisor checked his laptop. 11:43 in the morning. The room became silent. Mara frowned. Alessandro turned toward another advisor. When did my mother enter the cafe? Monday evening. And when did Mara call the police? Approximately 8:17 that night. Alessandro placed the financial record flat on the table. So, explain how Mara engineered an encounter for a payment that did not exist until more than 15 hours after she had already helped my mother. No one answered. His voice became colder. If this payment was her motive, why was it created after the act it was supposedly meant to purchase? The attorney immediately began examining the transaction chain. Another advisor opened the digital metadata attached to the trust records. Minutes passed. Then the answer began unraveling. The payment had not originated from Mara. It had been manufactured through an intermediary account linked to a consulting entity connected to Julian Cross. The missing page had been logged into a document archive after Mara had already surrendered everything found in her apron. She could not have kept a page that had never been in her possession. Alessandro looked around the table. Everyone who suggested Mara Ellis engineered my mother's vulnerability will correct the record now. Nobody hesitated. The accusations collapsed almost as quickly as they had formed. But Mara did not feel relieved. Alessandro turned to her. You were framed. I know. We can prove it. Good. Mara. She finally looked at him. He expected anger. He expected anger. What he saw was disappointment. You figured out the evidence was false, she said. That matters. A pause. But for a few minutes, you looked at me and wondered if everything I did had a price. Alessandro's jaw tightened. I had evidence in front of me, and you had me in front of you. That silenced him. Mara looked at Elena. Her expression softened. I'm glad you're safe. Elena stepped toward her. Mara, please. But Mara gently squeezed her hand. This isn't about you. Then she faced Alessandro one last time. I helped your mother when I thought she was just an older woman who needed someone to stay. Her voice never rose. I didn't know her last name. I didn't know she had money. I certainly didn't know she had a son who could summon 4 bodyguards before breakfast. No one smiled. That was the only evidence of my character you ever needed. Alessandro said nothing. Mara nodded. Finish your investigation. Then she walked out. No one tried to stop her, not even Alessandro. Especially Alessandro. Because for perhaps the first time in years, he understood that stopping someone and earning the right to have them stay were 2 entirely different kinds of power. And all the power he possessed could do nothing about the fact that Mara Ellis had chosen to leave. Julian Cross's scheme collapsed within 48 hours. Once Alessandro's financial team stopped looking at Mara and started following the actual money, the pattern became embarrassingly simple. Julian had learned about Elena's temporary medication-related confusion through his legitimate access to family trust matters. He saw an opportunity. The documents he brought to Elena would have granted fraudulent management authority over valuable legitimate properties, allowing entities connected to him to influence assets worth hundreds of millions. The altered valuation figures disguised what that authority was really worth. The payment connected to Mara had been created afterward for one purpose: to manufacture a motive. Julian had not planned some vast conspiracy. He had simply believed greed, paperwork, and Elena's temporary vulnerability would be enough. Then a cafe worker refused to cooperate with the story he needed. Financial records tied him to the fraudulent documents. Digital logs exposed the altered files. Security records supported Mara's timeline. The business card description she remembered connected him directly to the cafe encounter. By the end of the week, Julian Cross had been removed from every position connected to the Vitali trusts, and the evidence had been turned over through legal channels for prosecution. The problem was solved. Alessandro felt no satisfaction. He stood in his office, looking at a folder his assistant had prepared. Inside was an employment proposal. Senior Financial Operations Trainee. Excellent salary. Full benefits. Tuition assistance. A path into one of his legitimate companies after Mara completed her studies. On paper, it was an extraordinary opportunity. Alessandro stared at it for a long time. Then Elena walked in. She looked at the folder. "No, I didn't ask. You were going to. It's a legitimate position." "That makes it worse." Alessandro frowned. "How?" "Because now you can pretend it isn't an apology disguised as a salary." He closed the folder. "She is studying business administration." "I know. She is good with numbers." "I know. She deserves an opportunity." Elena sat across from him. "Yes." Alessandro waited. His mother smiled faintly. "But she deserves to choose it, without wondering whether it is payment for saving me, compensation for being humiliated, or a wealthy man trying to make himself feel forgiven." That landed exactly where Elena intended. Alessandro looked down at the folder. Money solved problems. Protection solved others. Influence opened doors. For most of his adult life, Alessandro had measured responsibility by what he could provide. Mara had asked him for none of it. He pushed the folder aside. What should I offer her? Elena's expression softened. The truth. The following afternoon, Mara was wiping down a table when the cafe became strangely quiet. She looked toward the entrance. Alessandro stood alone. No wall of black suits. No dramatic convoy visible through the windows. His security remained discreetly outside. Mara straightened. "If you're here to question my coffee supplier again, he has legal representation now." Alessandro almost smiled. "I deserve that." Her humor faded when she realized how serious he was. "What do you want?" "To apologize." Mara said nothing. Alessandro did not move closer. "Julian Cross has been exposed. The evidence has been transferred to the appropriate authorities. Your name has been cleared completely. I heard." "That isn't why I came." She waited. "I have spent years learning not to trust appearances," he said. "People lie to me. They manipulate evidence. They say what they think I want to hear." Mara's expression hardened slightly. Alessandro caught himself. "That is an explanation." He paused. "Not an excuse." Something in her face changed. He continued. "When those records appeared, I did what I have trained myself to do. I investigated. Yes. And in doing that, I forgot something I already knew." Mara folded her arms. "What?" "Who you were before any evidence existed." Silence settled between them. "You protected my mother before you knew her name," Alessandro said. "You challenged a man you believed was taking advantage of an ordinary older woman. You called the police. You stayed until she was safe." He held Mara's gaze. "There was nothing to gain." Mara looked away for a moment. "My mistake was allowing manufactured evidence to become more important than character you had already demonstrated." Alessandro's voice remained steady. "I humiliated you by doubting the reason behind the best thing you did." Mara looked back at him. "I'm sorry." No justification followed. No offer, no check, no job, just the apology. Mara studied him. Part of her had expected Alessandro Vitale to arrive with a solution large enough to overwhelm the problem. Instead, he had brought nothing. That mattered, but it did not erase what happened. "I believe you mean that," she said. Alessandro nodded. But I'm still hurt." He absorbed the words without defending himself. "I understand. I don't know what happens now." For a man accustomed to controlling outcomes, the answer was painfully simple. "You don't have to." Mara watched him carefully. "I need time." Everything in Alessandro's world had trained him to act, to negotiate, to persuade, to control uncertainty before uncertainty could control him. He did none of those things. "All right." Mara seemed almost surprised. "That's it? That's it. You're not going to send 4 men tomorrow to ask whether I've decided?" "No." 2. Mara. 1 very polite bodyguard. A reluctant smile appeared on his face. "No bodyguards." She almost smiled back. "Almost." Alessandro turned toward the door. "Take whatever time you need." Then he left. Mara watched through the window as the most powerful man she had ever met walked past his waiting security without looking back. For once, Alessandro Vitale had encountered something he could not command: purchase, investigate, or protect into submission. Her choice. And for the first time, he respected it enough to wait. 3 weeks passed. Alessandro kept his word. No bodyguards entered the café. No mysterious job offers appeared. No expensive gifts arrived with apologies disguised as generosity. Mara continued working, studying, and rebuilding the ordinary rhythm of her life. She completed an important stage of her business program with one of the highest scores in her class. Elena called immediately. Alessandro did not. Strangely, Mara noticed. Then one afternoon, she made a decision. Not because Elena asked. Not because she owed anyone anything. Because she wanted to. When Alessandro entered the café 2 days later, Mara was waiting. He approached the counter. "I was told you wanted to see me." "I did." His expression remained carefully neutral. Mara almost smiled. "You look nervous. I control a multi-billion-dollar business network." That wasn't an answer. A pause. "Yes." She smiled. This time, fully, Alessandro's shoulders relaxed. "I'm still not interested in being rescued," Mara said. "I know. I don't want a job I didn't earn. I know. And if 4 bodyguards ever arrive at my workplace asking for me again, I'm charging you for emotional damages. That seems reasonable." "Good." Alessandro studied her. "Does this mean I'm forgiven?" "It means you can ask me to dinner." For perhaps the first time in years, Alessandro Vitale looked genuinely caught off guard. "Dinner?" "A date, Alessandro." "I know what dinner is." "I wasn't certain." He stepped closer. "Friday? 7. I'll pick you up. 1 car." He sighed. 1 visible car. Mara laughed. That was when Nathan walked in, carrying 2 bags of coffee beans. "Mara, congratulations on your exam." He gave her a quick hug. Alessandro's expression changed immediately. Mara slowly turned toward him. "No, I said nothing. You didn't have to." Nathan wisely continued toward the storeroom. Mara glanced outside. 3 security men were watching him through the window. She stared at Alessandro. Is the most feared mafia boss on the East Coast still threatened by a coffee supplier? I have never been threatened by Nathan. Then why are 3 professional security men monitoring his coffee beans? Alessandro looked toward the window. He made one small gesture. All 3 guards immediately looked away. Mara burst out laughing. Weeks earlier, the morning 4 bodyguards came for Mara Ellis. She had believed helping one confused older woman had accidentally placed her in danger. She had no idea that one simple decision would bring her into the life of one of the most powerful men in America. Alessandro could command loyalty from thousands. He could buy almost anything. But Mara had given his mother something neither money nor fear could ever guarantee: kindness, before she knew who Elena was. Before there was anything to gain. That was the first reason Alessandro respected her. And Mara's refusal to lose herself after entering his world became one of the reasons he eventually loved her. Because the purest kindness is what we give before we know whether the person receiving it can ever repay us. And sometimes, the most powerful thing love can offer in return is not rescue, not money, not